In just one day, the United States triggered three major disruptions in the global economy, and the consequences are quickly mounting. First came an escalation in tensions with BRICS, the alliance of Brazil, India, China, Russia, and South Africa. Then came a blow to the global microchip industry, the very chips needed in smartphones, cars, and electronics. And finally, one of America's closest allies began to distance itself economically, signaling growing cracks in long-standing alliances. All of this happened within 24 hours. And it's not just about the headlines. These events show how the US economy itself is starting to wobble. India, Washington's key partner in the Asian region, is now facing sanctions for refusing to comply with US demands. President Trump has raised tariffs on Indian goods, from medicines to electronics to diamonds. But such actions only push India further away from the United States and closer to China, which could significantly weaken America's position on the world stage. This is especially important because India was the only BRICS country still supporting the US dollar. After such moves, it is likely to start reducing its reliance on it as well. Meanwhile, Trump is demanding that the largest chip makers relocate their factories to the United States. But instead of bringing benefits, this is producing the opposite effect. South Korea and Taiwan are now looking for alternatives, and China is getting the opportunity to accelerate the growth of its own chip industry. So let's break it down. Donald Trump has opened a new conflict, and this time, it's not with China and not with the Democrats. His target is the entire BRICS alliance, with India unexpectedly first in line. He has threatened to impose tariffs of 50% on Indian goods because of India's increasingly close trade with Russia and deeper involvement in BRICS affairs. Since the start of the war in Ukraine, India has been buying cheap Russian oil. While Western countries have been cutting back on purchases, India has continued to import in order to curb price growth and inflation. This infuriates Trump, who believes India is not behaving like a US ally and deserves punishment. But America cannot afford to lose India, especially in the medical field. India is often called the pharmacy of the world, producing more than 20% of the generic drugs that the US healthcare system relies on. These include cancer treatments, antibiotics, and blood pressure medications, supplied to hospitals, pharmacies, and nursing homes across the country. Without them, the American medical system could collapse. If Trump does impose a 50% tariff, drug prices will skyrocket. Hospitals already operating at their limits will face shortages. Pharmacies will run out of basic medicines. People will start cutting back on insulin, forgoing chemotherapy, and postponing surgeries, not because they don't want treatment, but because they simply can't afford it. The US does not have the capacity to quickly replace Indian supplies. Building pharmaceutical plants would take years and billions of dollars. In India, the system is already in place, cheap and efficient. If India reduces exports because of tariffs, resentment, or loss of trust, millions of Americans could be left without life-saving medications. This is no longer just an economic issue, it's a matter of national security. The United States already spends more on healthcare than any other country. If the Indian supply chain collapses, the nation could face a true medical disaster. Such a move is not just a mistake. Meddling with drug supplies is like playing with matches at a gas station. Once it ignites, it will be too late. Some Indian goods are already subject to 25% tariffs, but according to White House leaks, they could triple, especially for diamonds. The United States is the largest buyer of such stones, importing $24 billion worth each year. But here, Trump seems to be missing the point. India has options. China and Hong Kong would be happy to take over its diamond trade. If India turns eastward, it will not only preserve its economy, but also strengthen BRICS, and every stone that doesn't reach the US is another point scored for China. This is not just a fight for market share, it's a struggle for economic influence, and the United States is losing it. India is important not only as a pharmaceutical producer, it plays a key role in the field of IT services and exports textiles, electronics, and equipment. A 50% tariff would make all of this more expensive. Both American companies and ordinary consumers would suffer. Businesses would have to pay more, and in the context of inflation and supply disruptions, this would only intensify pressure on the economy. Most importantly, India is not an enemy. On the contrary, it has always been considered a partner of America, especially in containing China. But such an approach by Trump could push India away and drive it into the arms of China and Russia. This is exactly what BRICS countries are striving for, and instead of weakening them, Trump might actually make them stronger. Not long ago, India stated that it supported the dollar and had no plans to abandon it. But after all this, it may well return to the BRICS de-dollarization plan, and Trump does not intend to stop there. He has already made it clear that Brazil could be next. He had previously accused it of currency manipulation and imposed restrictions on steel supplies. Now, he could turn to its active trade with China and its participation in BRICS financial projects. Brazil is one of the main suppliers of food to the United States. Soybeans, coffee, beef, chicken, all of this comes from there. New tariffs would sharply raise prices in American stores, and farmers in both countries would lose important markets. This would hit agriculture and the wallets of ordinary people. Meanwhile, China and Russia remain at the center of attention. Trump has already spoken about a possible 60% tariff on all Chinese imports. This would affect hundreds of billions of dollars worth of goods, from electronics and clothing to household items. Prices for everyday goods would rise sharply. American companies like Apple and Tesla, which work with Chinese factories, would also be hit hard. And China would almost certainly respond in kind. This would trigger a new wave of tariff conflicts and problems for American companies abroad. Trump presents all this as protecting jobs and restoring fairness. But in reality, tariffs only increase costs for businesses and raise prices for people. Supply chains tighten, and the impact falls precisely on those he claims to protect. And while American families pay more and more, something far more significant is happening in the world. The planet's energy system is changing rapidly, and the United States could be left on the sidelines. Trump tried to isolate Russia with sanctions and trade restrictions, but Moscow did not give in. It found a powerful new partner and a direct route to the east. Russia is now supplying China with gas through a giant pipeline that changes everything. Power of Siberia 1 already delivers billions of cubic meters of Russian gas directly to China, and the under-construction Power of Siberia 2 will double that volume. These projects are completely reshaping the energy map of Eurasia. Russia, which previously depended on European markets, is now redirecting all its oil and gas toward Beijing. And China is happy to take it all, because it can. What is even more worrying is that China is buying this oil at reduced prices. Due to Western sanctions, Russia is forced to sell its resources cheaper, and China is taking full advantage of it. Against the backdrop of global energy price increases, Beijing is signing long-term deals for cheap oil. This gives it a colossal advantage. This is already an energy war, and the United States is clearly losing it. Every barrel of Russian oil purchased by China is a blow to American control over global markets. Every cubic meter of gas fuels Chinese factories, power grids, and even the defense industry. Meanwhile, American consumers are left with high prices, and Washington's influence grows weaker by the day. Before our eyes, a new energy alliance is taking shape, a powerful Moscow-Beijing axis. Their goal is independence from the West. If this energy corridor becomes permanent, it could shift the balance of power in the world for the next 50 years. But energy is not the only front where the redistribution of global power is happening. The next battleground is technology, and Trump is already igniting a new conflict. Now the focus is on semiconductors, tiny chips that power everything from smartphones to fighter jets. Trump's plan sounds simple: force giants like TSMC and Samsung to move production to the United States and cut off China's access to advanced technologies. That's why he is pushing the idea of 100% tariffs on imported chips unless they are made in America. But there's one problem: it doesn't work like that. TSMC, the world's most important chip manufacturer, is indeed building a plant in Arizona, but the project is facing delays, budget overruns, and staffing shortages. Samsung is having the same problems in Texas. These companies are used to the Asian model: dense supply chains, cheap labor, and strong state support. In the United States, they do not achieve the same efficiency and scale. Meanwhile, China is calmly catching up. In just the first half of 2025, Chinese companies are preparing for mergers and acquisitions in the chip sector. They are building their own plants, buying design studios, and launching projects with state support to replace foreign technologies. Trump's trade war is not slowing China down, it is accelerating it. Every export ban pushes Beijing to build its own base. Every new tariff makes China even more determined, and the results are already here. SMIC, China's leading chip maker, has begun producing 5-nanometer chips. Not long ago, it was believed that this would be impossible without American technologies. If things continue this way, China will not just catch up with the United States, it could surpass it in some advanced fields, especially in artificial intelligence and military technologies. Trump wanted to protect America's technological leadership, but his aggressive approach may bring the opposite result. He gave China exactly what it needed, a reason to stop relying on the United States forever. But while Washington is attacking BRICS countries, another shift is happening in the shadows, and it could prove no less dangerous. Japan, long considered America's most loyal ally, has begun acting on its own, and this is causing alarm in the White House. Tokyo has just signed a major agreement with India, a BRICS country the United States is trying to isolate. At the same time, Japan is expanding energy and technology cooperation with Brazil and strengthening its position across the global south. All this points to an obvious shift. Japan is increasingly making decisions without looking to Washington for approval. Moreover, Japan refuses to cut ties with China. Despite growing tensions, Japanese companies are expanding cooperation with Chinese partners, especially in the fields of electric vehicles and green technologies. Even the Bank of Japan has begun discussing reducing its holdings of U.S. government bonds. Concerns are growing that U.S. debt is no longer as reliable as it once was. For the United States, this is a troubling sign. If even Japan, the cornerstone of Washington's entire Asia strategy, begins to step away, then what is American influence really built on now? The global balance of power is shifting, allies are hedging their bets, and rivals are gaining strength. And while America is playing hardball economics, the rest of the world is writing its own new rules. Now, the main question is not how bold Trump's plan is, but whether America can afford to lose the rest of the world. So, to keep up with the latest developments, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. See you in the next episode.